It started with a laugh, just one laugh, but it was enough to shake the internet. A BBC reporter was covering an international conference when she came across a young Filipino delegate. He spoke politely, confidently, and with a clear Filipino accent. But as he began to answer her question, the reporter suddenly chuckled. It was small at first, but it grew louder. A laugh that seemed to mock, not amuse. The Filipino delegate paused, confused. He wasn't sure what was funny. He asked gently, "Did I say something wrong?" The reporter waved her hand dismissively, trying to move on. But the cameras caught everything. That short clip, just a few seconds long, would soon travel across the world. At first, it was just a few social media users who noticed it. Someone uploaded it with the caption, "BBC reporter laughs at Filipino accent. What's so funny?" Within hours, it spread like wildfire. Millions of people began to comment, share, and argue. Some defended the reporter, saying it was just an awkward moment. Others said it revealed something deeper, a quiet prejudice that too many people still hold against accents that sound different. But what no one expected was how the Filipino delegate, the man at the center of it all, would respond. Instead of anger, he replied with grace. He recorded a video, sitting in his small apartment, wearing the same blue shirt he wore at the conference. He looked straight into the camera and said softly, "My accent tells a story. It tells you where I come from, the people who raised me, and the language that shaped my world. Why would anyone be ashamed of that?" Those words hit millions straight in the heart. His video was only 3 minutes long, but it spoke volumes. He didn't attack the reporter. He didn't demand an apology. He simply told the world what it means to carry an accent, the pride and the pain. "An accent," he said, "is not a mistake. It's a memory of home." That single line became a viral quote. It appeared on shirts, posters, and even university walls. Celebrities, educators, and language advocates reposted his video. And suddenly, what began as a moment of mockery became a global conversation about respect, culture, and identity. The BBC found itself under pressure. Viewers demanded a response. "Do you tolerate this kind of behavior?" they asked. News outlets around the world picked up the story. Talk shows debated it. Was the reporter just nervous? Or did she reflect a deeper bias hidden beneath polished professionalism? Meanwhile, the Filipino delegate, whose name was Miguel, found himself overwhelmed. He had never been in the spotlight before. He was just a communication student attending the conference to represent his university. He never imagined that his calm reply would reach millions. "I didn't want revenge," he said in an interview. "I just wanted people to listen. Not to me, but to what the laugh really meant." And people did listen. In the Philippines, his video became a source of pride. Students shared it with the hashtag #MyAccentMyIdentity. Teachers played it in classrooms. Parents told their children, "Speak the way you speak. Don't let anyone laugh at who you are." But in the UK, the story took a different turn. The BBC issued a formal statement saying they were reviewing the incident. The reporter was temporarily taken off air. Some thought that was fair. Others said it was too much. But the heart of the debate wasn't punishment. It was understanding. What makes someone laugh at an accent? Is it superiority, insecurity, or just ignorance? Linguists began weighing in. They explained that every accent, no matter how different, is a reflection of a person's history and geography. There's no correct way to speak English, only different ways shaped by time, travel, and culture. But for centuries, certain accents were considered standard, while others were seen as less educated. That bias, they said, didn't disappear. It just learned to hide behind polite smiles and awkward laughs. Miguel's reply brought that hidden bias into the light. Soon, news channels invited him to speak. He was nervous at first, but his calm voice and genuine message won people over. "I don't hate her," he said about the reporter, "but I hope she understands that a laugh can carry 1,000 years of history." Imagine that. One sentence, one laugh, and suddenly the world is talking about how we hear each other. But here's where things got even more interesting. A few days later, the BBC reporter herself broke her silence. In a short post on social media, she wrote, "I realize now that my reaction hurt people. It wasn't my intention, but intention doesn't erase impact. I'm sorry." The apology received mixed reactions. Some people accepted it, praising her honesty. Others said it came too late. But what shocked everyone was what Miguel did next. Instead of ignoring her, he reached out privately. He sent her a message that read, "Thank you for understanding. I'd like to talk. Not for TV, but as two people." And she agreed. Their meeting wasn't broadcast. No cameras, no microphones, just two people sitting in a cafe in London. Later, both described it as one of the most honest conversations they'd ever had. She admitted she had grown up believing that a British accent sounded professional, while anything else sounded foreign. Miguel told her how Filipinos grow up learning English as a second language, not to imitate, but to connect. "We don't try to sound British," he said. "We try to be understood." That line, "we try to be understood," struck her deeply. She later said it changed the way she saw language forever. Soon after, she made a short on-air statement, saying, "To everyone who speaks with an accent, I hear you, I see you, I was wrong to laugh." It was rare for a major reporter to say something so personal on live television, but when she did, people noticed. The clip went viral again, not for the laugh this time, but for the apology. The internet, of course, had mixed emotions. Some said it was just damage control. Others said it showed growth. But one thing was certain, it got people talking again about how often accents are judged unfairly. And through it all, Miguel stayed grounded. He continued studying, often posting small reflections online. One of his posts read, "Respect starts with listening, even when someone sounds different." Another said, "You don't have to change your voice to be heard, you just need courage to speak." Those words became digital quotes shared by millions. His calm wisdom turned him into a quiet symbol of dignity. But fame isn't always easy. Miguel began receiving hate messages too, people accusing him of overreacting or playing the victim. Some said, "It was just a laugh, get over it." Others mocked him further, imitating his accent in cruel ways. He didn't respond with anger. Instead, he posted a simple line, "If kindness is weakness, then I choose to be weak." That sentence went viral overnight. Teachers, poets, and even politicians quoted it. Because in a world so quick to shout, his gentle strength stood out. The story might have ended there, with a lesson learned, apologies made, and awareness raised. But what happened next took things to another level entirely. 1 year later, at an international media ethics forum, the same BBC reporter was invited to speak. And, in a surprise twist, she invited Miguel to join her on stage. The crowd gasped when they saw him walk up beside her. They stood together, the journalist who once laughed, and the man whose accent she had mocked. And what happened on that stage left everyone speechless. The room fell silent. Hundreds of journalists, students, and language scholars watched as Miguel and the reporter stood side by side under the bright lights. No one knew what to expect. Some thought he was there to confront her publicly. Others whispered that it was a staged gesture of reconciliation. But what happened next proved that this was something entirely different. The reporter stepped forward first. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "A year ago," she said, "I laughed at something I didn't understand. I thought it was harmless. But my laughter showed my ignorance. I judged a man not by his words, but by the way he spoke them. And in doing so, I failed to see the story behind his voice." The audience listened quietly. She turned toward Miguel and continued, "He could have humiliated me. He could have stayed angry. But instead, he chose to teach me. And because of that, I stand here today not as someone who made a mistake, but as someone who learned." Then she stepped aside, letting Miguel speak. He walked up to the microphone, smiling shyly, his familiar calmness filling the room. "When people laugh at your accent," he said, "they're really laughing at your roots. But roots are not something to hide. They're something to grow from." He paused for a moment, scanning the faces in the crowd. We live in a world that celebrates diversity in food, fashion, and culture, yet we still judge voices. We love exotic dishes, but not exotic sounds. We forget that every accent carries a history of survival. The crowd erupted in applause. Miguel continued, I used to think that my accent made me sound less intelligent. I practiced speaking neutral English in front of the mirror because I thought it would make people respect me more. But now I know. Changing the way I speak doesn't make me smarter. It only makes me quieter, and silence is too heavy a price for acceptance. You could hear people sniffing softly in the crowd. Some journalists looked down, reflecting. The BBC reporter wiped a tear from her eye as Miguel finished. When we talk about equality, he said, let's remember that it doesn't start with power. It starts with how we listen. The entire hall rose in a standing ovation. Cameras flashed, but for once, the focus wasn't on scandal or controversy. It was on healing. Two people, once divided by a laugh, had come together to prove that empathy could be louder than mockery. After that day, the BBC launched a campaign called Voices of the World, highlighting journalists and speakers from different linguistic backgrounds. They featured accents from India, Nigeria, Jamaica, and the Philippines. The campaign slogan was simple but powerful: every voice matters. Miguel became an advocate for linguistic equality. He began giving talks around the world, visiting universities and conferences, encouraging young people to speak proudly, no matter their accent. You don't need to sound like anyone else to be respected, he often said. You just need to speak your truth. His story was turned into short films and even documentaries, not because he was famous, but because he reminded people of something they'd forgotten: that language is not just words, it's identity. Meanwhile, the reporter also transformed. She started a podcast featuring interviews with people from all over the world: taxi drivers, students, refugees, teachers, all sharing how their voices shaped their lives. In one episode, she said, I used to chase the perfect accent. Now, I chase authentic stories. And that, in itself, was a kind of redemption. But as their story spread, people began asking deeper questions. Why do we still equate certain accents with intelligence? Why do companies demand neutral English when they hire people? And why do so many young people feel the need to hide the way they speak just to fit in? What do you think? Should accent ever define how seriously someone is taken? Drop your thoughts in the comments section. We'd love to hear what you think. And while you're here, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one, and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Because sometimes, one story can change the way we see the world. But Miguel's journey didn't end there. Months later, he returned home to the Philippines. He was invited to speak at a graduation ceremony in his old university, the same place where he had once practiced English alone in the dormitory, trying to hide his accent. Now, he stood in front of hundreds of students who were eager to hear his story. He began by saying, I used to believe that success meant sounding like someone else, but today I know that real success means sounding like yourself. The crowd cheered. His professors, sitting in the front row, smiled proudly. He continued, We come from a country where our language dances between English, Tagalog, Cebuano, Ilocano, and more. We mix them, we blend them, and somehow we make it work. That's not confusion, that's creativity. That's the Filipino spirit. The students clapped louder, waving small flags. But then he grew serious. Still, too many of us are afraid to speak up in meetings or interviews because we worry people will laugh. I want you to remember this. If your voice carries sincerity, no accent can hide it. After the ceremony, a student approached him with tears in her eyes. Sir, she said, I used to stay quiet in class because people made fun of how I said my words. But after watching your video, I decided to speak again. Miguel smiled and said softly, That's how change begins. One voice at a time. It was moments like that that reminded him why he never got angry that day, the reporter laughed. Because sometimes, what looks like humiliation is really the beginning of transformation. Across the world, teachers began sharing his story in classrooms, encouraging students to celebrate their linguistic roots. Online, people started posting videos of themselves speaking proudly in their native accents, using the hashtag #MyVoiceMyPride. Even celebrities joined in, sharing their experiences of being mocked for how they spoke. One actor said, "For years, I tried to hide my Indian accent, but now I realize every time I erased my accent, I erased a piece of my soul." The movement became bigger than Miguel. It became a celebration of humanity itself. And through it all, he stayed humble. When asked how he felt about being a global symbol, he laughed gently and said, "I didn't plan to be viral. I just wanted to tell my story. Maybe the world was ready to listen." That's the thing about stories. They don't need to be loud to make an impact. Sometimes, the quietest voices echo the longest. Months later, during a live interview, the host asked Miguel, "If you could say one thing to the reporter who laughed at you, what would it be?" Miguel smiled and replied, "I already did. I told her thank you." The host looked surprised. "Thank you? For what?" He answered, "Because if she hadn't laughed, I wouldn't have spoken up. And if I hadn't spoken up, millions of people wouldn't have found the courage to speak too. Sometimes, even mistakes can start revolutions." The audience applauded once more. His story reminds us that empathy doesn't start with perfection. It starts with humility. It starts when we stop judging, stop laughing, and start listening. Because every accent, every voice, carries something beautiful. Proof that language can connect us even when the world tries to divide us. And maybe, just maybe, the next time someone speaks with an accent, instead of laughing, we'll lean in and listen a little closer, not to find flaws, but to find their story. So, what about you? Have you ever been laughed at because of the way you speak? Or have you ever judged someone else's voice without realizing it? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else to speak proudly too. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with friends and family. Because this isn't just a story about one Filipino man, it's a story about all of us, about how the words we speak and the way we speak them can change the world. And it all began with a laugh.